Hello and welcome to part 2 of Healing the Superego. This is the most up-to-date information that I have. I'm happy to be sharing it with you now. Very grateful to Pete Walker for sharing it with me and for offering permission for me to share it here on this channel. I highly recommend his book, CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, and he has a new book out that's called Homesteading in the Eye of the Storm. I haven't read that yet, but apparently it's an autobiography and a description of his recovery from CPTSD as well. So thank you to Pete Walker for all of his work, without which none of this would be happening at all. So in part 1, we looked at the self-protection process. Now in part 2, we're going to look at self-care. So what was the problem in childhood that created a toxified superego? Well, the parent that was looking down at the child was, instead of noticing when the child did good things, was only noticing when the child did negative things. And even if the child didn't do negative things, it simply used projective identification to put negativity on the child's actions. What happens in childhood, in our interactions between ourselves and our parents that we look up to, literally, because they're really tall when you're dead small. Try and remember what it was like when your head was below people's knees and you literally, when they spoke, you had to go like this to see them. Really important formative years. Your brain was at its highest level of neuroplasticity. It was very open and it was just sucking up information the whole time. If they're pouring scorn on you, you internalize that, and that becomes the superego, or toxic superego, or inner critic. So you internalize a bad mummy or a bad daddy or teacher or religious leader or whoever was in a position of authority over you for a period of time, and that then continues. That recording, the recording of this interaction, goes inside of you and then plays over and over again ad infinitum. I do like using a bit of Latin. Infinitely, until you stop it, which is why in the first section we were so focused on thought stopping, using anger and fighting back and resisting the superego to stop this infinite cycle. It's an imperfect process. It's not linear. If it works some days and then other days it doesn't for you, you're not doing it wrong. That's how it's supposed to be. It's going to be messy. It's going to be organic. It's going to be somewhat chaotic. If you expect it to be clean and linear and then judge yourself or cut yourself off because it's not, that's just the superego trying to apply perfectionism against you to stop you from healing, expanding and thriving. And we are trying to move from survival mode to thrival mode and to expand and to live our lives fully in emotional freedom. So there's negative noticing. The negative noticing, the parent being hypervigilant to the child over time, makes the child just feel ashamed and sad, guilty, so on and so forth. In my personal experience, it left me feeling very, very guilty, very ashamed, and with a very, very strong, pervasive feeling that there must be something wrong with me, to the point where if somebody tried to express love or tried to be intimate with me, I would internalize that as an impossibility, as something else, and I would start to fight with it because it didn't match my internal beliefs about who I was and how, whether I was lovable or whether I even existed as a human being or not. My personal traumatic experience led me to believe I wasn't actually a human. I've only just realized this recently in my own recovery process. Fascinating stuff and really helpful. So I only recently consider myself to be human. 42, I'm human now. Happy birthday to me. So what we want in the self-care section is we want to turn that into positive noticing. As I said in section 1, this is a process of reparenting the parts of ourselves that have been abandoned, that have been hurt, that have been wounded, the internal child. So this was the ailment, And if I'm an apothecary, then what Mr. Walker would be suggesting as your medicine that I'm to give you is positive noticing. This is negative noticing. The child is only noticed as for being useless in psychoanalytic terms. They would internalize the idea that they're a bad object. They have no positive traits. So we have to work against that. We have to swim against that tide in adulthood, which is going to be awkward and difficult and non-linear, as I say, with positive noticing. So the therapist, the coach, the other adult in the room who's trying to assist has to, as well as doing the self-protective work, it's both. It's not one or the other. These are not optional. You have to do them both. It's yin and it's yang. So the first is fighting back, which is yang. This, the self-care, the nurturing, the recognizing, that's yin. In our masculine, we yang and we fight back. In our feminine, as we're expressing the feminine, we create a yin safe space and we nurture. So what you have to do is notice for yourself your positive traits, and then these need to be reinforced. I like training. I particularly like strength training. And what happens with strength training is you do reps over time. And people think, oh, you've developed strength over time. You have, but when you do strength training over time, it's not just strength that you develop, it's also skill. So there's a skill in, I don't know, a deadlift. There's a skill in an overhead press or whatever you like, but it develops with reps over time. If your stream is moving this way and we need it to go the other way, you have to be realistic about how much effort and how many reps you're going to have to bang out over time. Your job is nothing less than reconditioning old neural pathways. And they're all you've ever known for your whole life. These things have been running as viruses, adware, spyware, ever since you were a child. So when you start to work against them, the system will push back, but you can win. You can win, but you must be prepared to put in the reps, and you do need a work ethic. So you'd think, what the hell is he on about? We've gone from self-care and being in the yin to banging out reps. Being in the yin is not easier than being in the yang. People think yin means, oh, chill out now. You know, yin is inside the cave, inside the fortress, inside the home. Oh, relax. It's all right, innit? Okay, try yin yoga and get back to me on relaxing and how much easier it is. You need to be just as diligent, just as Spartan, just as disciplined in self-care as you do in your self-protection. If there was anything that I'd be sharing with combat veterans, and guys and girls who come back from the security industry or the military or the police, is you have to be just as disciplined in your self-care as you are in your self-protection. And you have to put in the reps, because it's not natural for us. If we have CPTSD, if we have a toxic superego, if we haven't activated inner and outer critic, our natural relaxed state is going to be what? It's going to be what we've already known in the past. And we're trying to build new neural pathways that move in the opposite direction, moving into the future. Put in the reps. Do the work. Have a work ethic. I have to love myself today. Now, if I said to you, you've got to be disciplined today and you have to protect yourself today, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to protect myself. You have to love yourself today. You have to reinforce the positive noticing. As Pete Walker wrote in the email to me, which I read out to you yesterday, you've got to reinforce your positive traits, your positive accomplishments, and your behaviors and the things that people love you for and the things that you've done well in the world. Because when you relax, you won't see that. You'll focus on the negative because of the entraining from childhood that we're now trying to alter. So we're trying to make this good, smile with halo, so that this, us, feels good, smile with halo. That's our job now. This is what we have to do. But it's not easy and it's not fast. It's going to be measured. Your work on this will be measured in months. So every day you're going to have to do this a few times a day. Positively noticing what you've done that is good. Positively noticing your accomplishments. For people who don't have this, this would come naturally. They naturally. So if you imagine there's like feeling good about yourself and feeling bad about yourself, we're always leaning towards feeling bad as a baseline state. So in order to get you here, it's just like yoga or strength training. Imagine you've got like this, like I do. Your posture's bad and you do this, right? What do I have to do to get that sorted? Well, I want to be here. So what do I have to do? I have to go here. This is how I stretch, in the hope that if I keep stretching up here, I'll come back to that neutral spine state instead of doing this. There's a sad story to this. I did this because when I was a kid, I grew tall really fast and it stopped, which I'm not happy about. But when I was 12, 13, I was a head taller than the other kids. But because I was taller, I'd get hit, I'd get swatted, and I learned to duck. And so in the end, to not be noticed in the particular environment I was raised in, I would go alongside the other kids like this, and it just stayed like that. So my tendency is this. I cave my shoulders forward, it's all protective here, and now I have to train myself to straighten up. This, you'll notice a lot of people walk around like this. You're protecting your heart, your guts, your viscera. It's a protective stance. And dropping like this, the phones make us do this even more, which shallows your breathing and it affects your anxiety levels. You've got to stand up, got to straighten up. So we're stretching into feeling good. So you must deliberately stretch into, what did I do good? What am I doing right? What's good about me? What's the discipline that I've displayed in, I don't know, in seeking to heal, in seeking to flourish, in seeking to thrive? That's how stretch in the other direction. Because I don't want some people to get confused and go, hey, isn't that narcissism? No, that's not narcissism. You're supposed to do this naturally. If you don't, you're vulnerable to narcissists if you don't do this naturally. If you have a tendency towards only focusing on the bad things, you won't feel like you deserve anything better than abuse. If you don't feel like you deserve anything better than abuse, that's why you struggle to leave. That's why I struggled to leave my abusive relationships with my exes, because I didn't think I deserved better. Pete Walker was at pains to reinforce, as you heard yesterday, it's a yin-yang process. We must be doing both. And he said, if you listen to part 1, which I advise you do, in any single session, he may take the client through cycles of self-care and self-protection on any issue that comes up. So the issue comes up, they rage, they fight back, they say no, they say shut up to the inner critic. They may even externalize it and swear. And I don't know, act out in some way. So get thee behind me, Satan. Whatever they do, and it comes out, and that's the self-protective phase, but then he'll immediately follow that with the self-care phase. So that sounds like really good advice to me, folks. You do the fighting back, you fight back, and then you reinforce with the self-care. One part of this that I would add on is I suspect that this will be really, really useful. This repetitious reinforcement of your good positive traits will be really useful in healing the superego. We don't want to annihilate it. It's a part of you. It's supposed to be there. It's supposed to be that part of you that enforces your value system, that distinguishes between right and wrong. One of the things that we'll be looking at on this channel is developing a moral philosophy and using philosophy as a way of helping us psychologically. Why do we develop a moral philosophy? To help heal the superego. It's supposed to tell you, it's not supposed to just go, you're horrible, you're worthless, you're a maggot. You're horrible, you're worthless, you're a maggot. It's supposed to be saying, that's a good thing to do. Go ahead and do that. That will help you to thrive. Don't do that. Yes, of course, you could snort more coke. I'm sure it'll fit up your nose, but perhaps you should just stop now, go to bed, and wake up tomorrow and go for a jog. So it's supposed to give you a sense of what's right to do and what's wrong to do. When it's toxified, when it's broken, all it does is deliver one message, which is to shame you and make you feel guilty for existing as a human being. So we want this thing functioning, and I think this together, this yin-yang methodology that Pete Walker has kindly laid out for us and has given me permission to share, is a really, really good way of achieving that aim of healing the superego and reintegrating it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you found that useful, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Cheers.